Hi, good evening, everybody. Welcome. I am so thrilled that Dr. Maria Paiewonsky is here tonight to talk about how to creatively address transition needs during COVID-19. Maria is an incredibly experienced in the needs of individuals with disabilities with transition. She's from UMass Boston Institute for Community Inclusion, the School for Global Inclusion and Social Development. And I've known Maria for many years. She is such a maven of knowledge and expertise and resources, and she's always Mac's go-to person with any transition questions. So we are really fortunate that she's here tonight. We're joined by our communications manager, Lilia Malikshi, Joanne Pino, and it is really hard to believe that we are in the middle of October, and it's been 7 months since the pandemic really began here in Massachusetts, and there's no end in sight. We realize the things that are still very difficult for most students and their families. Many of the students we know are still getting totally remote instruction. Some are getting some in-person and remote hybrid instruction. And there's a few who are in-person more full-time. And there's just the continuing shifting sands of uncertainty and delays with the plans. And it's the upticking of numbers and the anxiety. So we know things are not running smoothly for many folks, and particularly challenging in these times is how to address the transition needs of our older youth with disabilities in a way that can be safe during COVID. There's a few housekeeping things before we turn it over to Maria. We will, be ending within 45 minutes and then have another 15 minutes for those who can stay longer for questions. It is being recorded, and I'm going to turn it over to Lilia and there will be some polling questions throughout. And I think that's all I have other than for you, Lilia, to kind of go over the housekeeping things.
Yeah, thank you. And our first poll just went up, so please answer that. So first, thank you everyone for joining us. Welcome back to all of our chat regulars. Good to have you. First, I have an exciting announcement from MAC. Our tickets went on sale today for our Overcoming Together event, which will be on November 18th from 7 to 8 p.m. At the event, we'll hear stories from families that MAC has helped during this COVID-19 time, as well as remarks from some big name speakers. So you won't want to miss it. The entire event will take place online. It'll be a webinar format similar to this one. And tickets are on sale now at massadvocates.org/together. And I'll put that in the chat as well. So logistics for tonight, we'll be pausing throughout the presentation to take your questions. Please submit your questions at any time using the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. Those of you who are joining us on Facebook, please submit your question as a comment under the live stream. Our great volunteer, Christina Perez, is there to facilitate your Facebook questions. If you see someone else's question that you'd like us to answer, please give it a like. Also, please keep an eye on the chat box in Zoom and the comments if you're on Facebook for resources that we'll share throughout the presentation. Thank you.
And we will try to get to as many questions as possible. If we can't answer your question, please email or call our helpline and we'll give you that information as well. And so I'm just thrilled to turn things over to Maria. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It is really my pleasure and my honor to be here talking about this extremely complicated time in our lives. I completely appreciate how difficult this is. I am kind of excited to talk to you tonight, though, about some solutions that transition specialists have been coming up with. And I'm going to tell you how I happen to know that. And I'm not saying that these are solutions for everybody, but I want to give people some hope that transition specialists and staff are trying to figure this out. So just give me 1 second here while I move this poll over.
And you can see we have really, the parents here tonight represent a broad range of different types of disabilities.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm sorry I got so distracted by that. But I did see that there was a wide range, which is great. So let me tell you what I'm hoping to do with my time tonight. It's just a few slides, but in those slides, I'm trying to provide you with as much information as I can. So first of all, I want to be able to just provide a little bit of information about the context in which I'm coming to this webinar tonight, which is to tell you a little bit about this transition specialist training program that we have at UMass Boston. And I also have gleaned a little bit of information from the Massachusetts Inclusive Concurrent Enrollment Initiative partners, because I also do a lot of work with them. Then just very basically just talk a little bit about what do we mean by transition services, and I will not bore with everybody with that. We're just going to look at one slide. And then we're going to look at some innovative practices and solutions that I have asked transition specialists to share with me, and I happen to be doing a practicum with them, so I'm getting very fresh information. We're going to look at how people are doing transition assessment right now, how they are doing career development education, which is an extremely critical part of transition services. We're going to look at how people are focusing in on access to post-secondary ed or preparation for that in higher ed, and also what people are doing to promote independent living. And then I'm going to leave it for questions, and I understand that some might get peppered or sprinkled in through this, and I'm perfectly fine with that. So hopefully this will meet your expectations for this conversation tonight. So let me introduce you to the transition specialists that I talk to. These are the transition specialists who are in a training program at UMass Boston. They are in the cohort that's about to graduate in December. They are coming from, as you can see, from a wide range of school districts across Massachusetts. This particular cohort, we don't have too much representation in the western part of the state, but that's not typical. We usually have a range. And lo and behold, their second semester, halfway through their training, not even quite halfway through their training, they were also part of everybody else that suddenly had to pivot and try to support students from a distance, remotely. So we, the instructors, were also having to quickly pivot and try to figure out how do we still build their competencies as transition specialists, and at the same time trying to help them help their students. So what I did was I asked them to tell me, let's look at the last 7 months. How have we pivoted our work so that we are still providing transition services? So it's not really an option not to provide transition services. So what are we doing? And so that's what I'm going to try to share with you this evening, is here's what they said about how they are looking at transition assessment, career development education, post-secondary ed, and independent living. All right, so let's move on. All right, and also just so you know, I also do work with the Macy Initiative. So I also want to highlight something that came out of a recent practice that I heard just this week about what people are doing at Framingham State to keep college going. Okay, so here's what transition services is. I always like this flow chart that comes out of Seattle. Because I think it really makes it very clear what we're talking about when we're talking about transition services. And I ask transition specialists to use this as much as possible so that everybody's on the same page when we're talking about what transition services are. For families, it's a way of understanding the expectations you should have for transition services. And for transition specialists, I try to say, these are the expectations that we have for your work. So this is, we need you to understand and be able to communicate all that you're doing to support transition services. Tonight, I want to focus in on those 3 things that were highlighted for this presentation, for this chat series. So I am highlighting what people are doing to conduct age-appropriate transition assessments. We are also going to look at how people are providing transition services And we're also looking at how they are coordinating services with adult agencies. These are 3 key things that transition services includes and that you should expect is going on. And this is what we're trying to help people to do remotely. So that's the context of what I'm talking about tonight. Okay, so here's what happened when I asked, how are you doing transition assessment? Because normally we might say you should be helping people doing situational assessments out in the community. You should be doing assessments out in their jobs. You should be doing assessments with their study skills. All those things they still need to do. But what they're saying is, yeah, okay, so we kind of had to pivot a little bit and do this more online. But what they are doing is they're trying to find the most helpful online resources. So there's a major one-stop career center, which is where anybody can go for employment support. And several of them said that they are actually finding, because they had an assignment to take students to the local what we call in Massachusetts, the mass hire offices. And so normally they would have been taking them there and doing some work in the mass hire office. Now they're having to do this online. So they're trying to find the best tools that are the most meaningful for young adults who are transition age. So they said that they are finding very good interest inventories there, skills assessments, and work values assessments. Those are 3 things that they pointed out that they are finding are very helpful. Now, I also, where you see the hyperlink, of course, when I send out this PowerPoint, you'll be able to see these resources for yourself. And I highlight that in particular because we also had a conversation about 2 websites where they are offering really good videos of jobs. And I actually had not heard of, before I asked them, I had not heard of the Dr. Kit career videos. And they are really it's very comprehensive, all kinds of videos where people are talking about their jobs. And it's listed, it's by category. And so some of them are using the Dr. Kit career videos to orient students if they're not able to do in-person video interviews with them or job shadows. They're using this instead and finding that this is very helpful. Also, then somebody said, yeah, and you know what? Khan Academy has some career videos that are also very good. And I have looked at both of these, and I have to admit, these are really very good. And given where we're at right now, this is a very good replacement. It's not the best. Obviously, we'd prefer it for people to go out and talk to people in real life. But if you're not able to do that, then these are very good videos. And what people are doing is they are trying to wean out, this is the cluster of jobs you said you're interested in. Let's take a look at these and then debrief about them. And then some people are saying that they're using, because they are using Google Classroom, that's the platform that they're using in their schools, they said they're actually trying to then use Google Forms to customize questions to do informal assessments with students so that they can maybe take information they're getting from these other activities and then customize it for them. So that's one. This is a series of activities that they are saying we are doing transition assessment as best we can, and we're actually having some luck with these and seeing that the students are kind of engaged in this. But here's another couple of things that they're doing. So when we talk about career awareness, when we talk about career development education, we're talking about career awareness, like really just understanding what careers and jobs are. Then career exploration, how can we find out more about these careers that you say you might be interested in? And then career immersion is getting out there and trying out some jobs. So here's what some teachers have said they did. One teacher said, and then 2 or 3 others said, I'm doing the same thing. They're recruiting people who have a range of jobs. So sometimes it's family and friends, and other times it's they're finding other people that can join a Zoom meeting and having the students do an informational interview with somebody. So the example that somebody gave was a friend of hers is a dental hygienist. So she came with all her equipment and she joined the Zoom. She was able to show everybody what her job was. And what they do sometimes ahead of time is they prepare the students to ask the kinds of questions that they would if they were bringing them to do a job shadow. There is a way of doing these informational interviews and job shadows. They're just having to do it a little bit differently. And then another example that somebody gave was that they have a Facebook page for current and alumni students of this transition program. And what this transition specialist did is she posted on Facebook, hey, we're looking for some alumni who can either do an informational interview with us or show us where you work if they were still working. So she's tapping into the resources that she has with this Facebook page, and you'll see when you click on that link that she's got this, they're doing all kinds of communications with alumni, meaning the students that graduate from her program, and she is tapping into their experiences. So those are a couple of ways that people are doing career awareness with students. Now, there's a teacher, and she got a lot of people talking about this. She said, you know what? We actually are doing a little bit of in-person support with students. They are coming to school like 2 or 3 times a week. They recently got permission to take students outside. So she said, okay, I'm going to do career exploration, and I will focus then on the outdoor careers. So you can see she has come up with a host of jobs, and students are what she's trying to do is make it as engaging as possible. So she's trying to give them turns to take, to participate in all of these. So they're looking at jobs as ranging as landscaping, but animal care. They're doing some landscaping and some architecture kinds of jobs. They're looking at these kinds of things. So she is doing her best to say, there's no reason I can't still do career exploration. I just have to focus in on then all those jobs I can find outdoors. So that's, when you look at that, that is a number of ways that people are able to address career development. An extremely important piece of transition services, between the assessments, the informational interviews, job shadows or job observation, and then actually getting out and looking at these jobs. So under career development education, these are some of the activities that they're doing.
We just have a quick clarifying question. Can you explain what the OneStop Career Center is?
Yes, so the OneStop Career Centers are what we might have all considered to be that place that we all went to when we needed a job. I forgot what it was originally called, but this would be what we would all know from our teenage years. When anybody in any district or town needs a job, you could go there. And that department has sort of evolved over time to usually be called the OneStop Career Center. So anybody, it's not a person with a disability, anybody can get there and get some tiered support. The main thing that people can get is, access to job listings. But if you need more support, you can do interviews with people, and they can help kind of tailor your job search with you. They also offer anybody Dress for Success workshops, resume writing workshops, interview skill workshops. So this is really anybody. And then like about 10 years ago, they said, you know what, we really need to have vocational rehab joining the general career development offices. And so there are initiatives in which they are focusing in on maybe one person having an expertise in disability and accommodations to support people who walk through the door who might need some extra support. I'm trying to think of, in Worcester, it's called Workforce Central. In Fresh Pond in Cambridge, it's called Career Stop maybe. But you'll find they're all over Massachusetts. You don't have to go far to find one of these offices. And for quite some time now, we have been telling transition specialists and staff, you need to access these resources. These are also the places too where often they are the ones that are supporting summer jobs. So either your town is offering summer jobs or these one-stop career centers are getting funding to support students in jobs in the summer.
So Maria, when we're send the slides off, later at the beginning of next week, maybe we can send people information about where to find the
Yes, yes, I'd be happy to do that. I'd be happy to put in a link. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Got someone saying they're called Mass Hire now. They rebranded. Is that?
Yes, it's Mass Hire now.
Okay.
So it used to be called the One-Stop Career Centers, and in Massachusetts, we now call it Mass Hire for the last couple of years.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All I want to say about this is that and I'm sorry that it's blurry, but this is how we are trying to teach people that, and we are still saying, even though we have some unusual barriers to our work, essentially, this is still what you need to be able to accomplish with students. Understand what their vision is. Putting a career plan together means you know what their vision is, you know what their talents and skills are. You're helping them to understand what it's going to take for them to pursue their career interests. You're working on the appropriate assessments for them to understand how to write, for the team to write measurable post-secondary goals and annual goals to help them pursue and develop the skills and knowledge for their post-secondary goals, listing out their work history, and then what are the next steps? That's one of the things that we really work on, is that the transition planning form is supposed to be a very live document, very active and always changing and updated. And so we're trying to teach people this, what we call these snapshots, is what we're saying is, when you write in a career assessment for students, try to make it accessible for them to read, because you're trying to teach them these skills and help them understand this. And by the way, families might appreciate this kind of format, as well as the written documentation that you provide. That's what I'm going to say about that. Now, around post-secondary education, we actually do require, I come from Think College, so nobody's going to get away with not talking about college with students. Normally, oh, wait a minute, we're going to do a poll. So should I keep talking while we do the poll, or should I wait?
I think it's okay. You can remove it so doesn't distract you, but people usually fill it out pretty quickly if you don't. So you can keep going.
Okay.
And just exit.
And then Maria, once it's done, I then launch the results, so they'll pop up again.
Okay.
Yeah. Why don't we
and then I'll stop talking for a minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll be interested in these responses too. So we also require, and it's best practice, it's part of our work is in IDEA and transition services, is how are we helping students to prepare for post-secondary education or training. We require the scholars in this program, transition specialists, to help students explore college. So normally they are having to learn how to take public transportation to get to a local college. They have to set up, they need to do a tour of the campus. They need to set up a meeting with disability services to find out what accommodations are in college and what it will take to request accommodations. And also hopefully give them a chance to visit or look through a class, which is what you see as a student walking by a class. All of a sudden, we were not able to do that. And we had to find other ways for transition specialists and transition staff to give students that opportunity to continue to explore college. So on the next slide now, I'm going to show you how some people have been doing that. So one thing that happened is one transition specialist said, okay, I just had to, obviously I needed to switch it up here. And so what I did is I created an opportunity for virtual college tours. So she was looking at with the student, looking at the college media, at the social media exploration. They did a campus tour. So all of a sudden some colleges were already pivoting and providing campus tours through film, some video, that was on their website. They worked out questions that they had about the campus tour. And then they set up they set up interviews with disability services to do this way through Zoom, since they couldn't do it in person. Obviously, it's not the way we would have preferred it, but this was an alternative. And then what she said is, after I did this with the student, then I met virtually with him and his parents, and we reviewed what we thought about this particular college and the classes and what it would take to get accommodations. Okay. All right. I'm going to take a minute here. So we have 22% is requiring in-person. The IEP team, 37% is tried. My child.
So more than 40% have not received any transition services. About a quarter have received in-person transition services, and then around another 40% looks like have received transition services remotely.
Mm.
So that's, a large chunk have not received any.
Yeah.
But over 50% have, looks like. Thank you for answering the poll.
I guess what I'm going to say is, I should say too, that the transition specialists that I'm training, they are supporting a really wide range of students. I think the transition specialists that are supporting the students with the most complex medical needs are the ones that are actually teaching in person. And they are challenged by where they can go and what they can do with students. Although I will show you some examples of what that transition specialist is doing, but she would be the first to tell you it took a while for the state to give them some direction on how to support them. All right, then another person is trying to get a representative from Disability Services to come and do an informational interview with her whole class, which she's arranging now. She has a person who's going to do it, and so they're going to do a virtual Q&A with this person from Disability Services. And Disability Services was quite accustomed to being part of the community. They often are going to those transition fairs or college and career fairs. So this is really for them just pivoting as well to doing it remotely. So those are some ways that they are continuing to have students still part of college searches. What I want to point out though, is I just found out about this week, is that Framingham State has a Macy Initiative. And so what they're doing is they're going to—
Not everybody knows what Macy is.
I'm sorry. I had said it before once. Massachusetts Inclusive Concurrent Enrollment, where they are supporting students with intellectual disabilities, developmental disabilities, or autism to include college in their transition services, excuse me. And so right now there's about, I don't know, Julia, how many programs are there? 14 institutes of higher ed that are supporting students?
Around there, yeah.
Yeah. And Framingham is having an open house, because this is typically something they would have done to encourage the students and families to think about including college in their transition services. So they are going to have 2 virtual open houses. So that's just another way that on the college side, they are still understanding that this is still a pretty new kind of idea for a lot of people. And so they are, and I like that they're offering 2 as well. So they're gonna see if they can get, and hopefully what they're doing is promoting this to the school partners that they have. So every college that's part of this initiative has a minimum of 2 or 3 school districts, and they generally have more like 5 or 6 neighboring school districts are their partners. So that's a way that people are figuring out another way for students to prepare for college. But there's a couple of other ideas that have been coming up. So there's people that are including, hold on one second, I'm just going to move this for a second so I can read my, yes, okay. There's a couple of people that are planning college and career fairs, and normally this would be they partner with guidance and general ed, and they would have these really nice, rich representatives from colleges, but also they might have people from careers. And they said, okay, how can we still do this? Because we understand the value of all of this. So they're going to try to still have a college and career fair. They are putting a more of an emphasis on trades this year. That was their goal anyway. But they now, instead of having like piles of people in the gymnasium, they are thinking about how they can have sort of like an online document, some with live meetings, but also links to live meetings and interviews, but also to have resources available for students and Zoom rooms to ask questions. And the whole idea for that is just to help them get a broader understanding of opportunities. So in the meantime, what they're doing is they're also arranging some pre-recorded interviews with people in different careers. And then they're going to add that to their resources for this college and career fair. So is it perfect? No. But is it something? Yes. And are they finding ways of getting real people and real jobs to participate in this? Yes. So that's, that's another way, an acceptable way really of promoting college and career readiness. Obviously you need to pair this with other activities, but this is something that this school district is doing. And a couple of the other ones told me that they're doing something similar.
We're getting some questions in, if can take a quick break here.
Yeah.
Sorry with you. All right. So our first question is, how would you go about helping an 18-year-old find a first job that is remote? Is that even possible?
The job is remote, or the job exploration is remote?
It sounds like they want the job to be remote.
Okay.
I guess both.
First of all, when I send out some resources, I'm going to show you some resources that my institute put together for this very thing on finding jobs in the community. But I will tell you that some of the ways that I am hearing that some transition specialists are helping students to find remote jobs is tapping into more entrepreneurial activities, or pairing up with somebody who has an independent business and working with them on either marketing or selling themselves or helping with a website. So that's one way that they're doing that, is because that's another way that anybody would have it, is doing some online sales. I'm trying to think of some of the other jobs that some people are telling me that they actually have students in jobs, that they've been able to keep their jobs.
In person, you mean?
In person. Maybe a great story, I think I told Julia this story about a team that had just helped a young person get a job, a transition age student get a job at a Target. And then everybody was sent home, and they were really nervous because they had intended to provide some support for this student for at least a month, adjusting to working at Target. And then they couldn't get into the store, and they explained to the employees at the Target that they didn't know what they were going to do. And they were like, what do you mean you don't know what you're going to do? We're going to take care of that. We're going to provide the support. So it was like tapping into, they should have known, like, of course we can ask about natural supports, but they were so nervous, they didn't even think that at this early stage to tap into the natural supports. So there are, more and more stories like this of people that are willing to be the natural support in the jobs. But right now, I only know of people that are having jobs like that, or people getting creative about more entrepreneurial ways of staying employed from home. So That's my answer for there. But I am going to send you a link to my colleagues who have other ideas on that. Okay, and then finally, I just wanted to say that part of transition services is working on independent living skills if appropriate. And so I had actually a number of ideas that came to me about how people are supporting students. And they range from working on navigating around the campus. There's a students with more complex needs that are at a private school and they have a campus, and that teacher is helping them. If they can't be out in the community, at least they can be in their campus working on their wheelchair skills, and they're navigating around the campus. Other people are using YouTube videos to learn from advocates themselves about advocating for or understanding disability awareness and disability disclosure. And the example I'm going to show you is that on YouTube, you can find the 411 on disability disclosure, which is considered to be, you know, it's probably one of the most popular resources that we use. It comes from the National Collaborative on Workforce Development Youth. And it's really teaching young people to think about when and if they need to disclose a disability, how to do it. There are other people that are using YouTube videos to hear from advocates themselves about their workplace rights, and then rehearsing how to advocate for their own accommodations or adaptations at work. Somebody mentioned using this resource called Empowered by Them. It's a teacher who has a blog, a very rich blog with tons of resources around all kinds of resources for young people in transition. But in particular, she was looking at their self-advocacy tools. And then the final example I'll give you is somebody who said, well, I do the academic parts with students, and then they often tell me they're bored at home. And she said, well, you shouldn't be bored. You must have things you can be doing. And so what she does is she sets up individual meetings with them, and she sort of monitors them as she says, you must have chores you're supposed to do at home. And if you're getting stuck, okay, I'll log in, and I'm going to help you to move along in building up your independence with your chores. And she said that she's also helped them to practice calling and doing their own takeout orders. So those are some of the examples that they have used. Mind if we stop? I'm curious about the poll here.
Yeah, we can see from the poll, thank you all for answering it, that about, almost 20% of the people who answered their student has gained new skills with the transition services during COVID. About a half have not gained new skills, and about a third of the students have regressed in the areas of transition, which is maybe not surprising, but that's what's so worrisome about all this extended pandemic, which is why it's so great to hear these creative ideas of how to, as you said, everybody would agree it's better to be in the community and in person, but it's great to have some of these ideas of how to continue to address transition needs.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's actually that's it for, oh, I'm sorry. One more thing I wanted to say is that we also it's extremely important to continue with interagency collaboration, because especially for the older students, especially when there were so many problems getting those 688 referrals done and the adult agencies moving along with services as well. Some of the things that they have said is, oddly, and this is very common that I hear this, they're having more luck arranging for the pre-employment or the pre-ETS services when they're doing them online, because when they were doing them face-to-face, a number of teachers were having a lot of difficulty with students, which is great, is that they were very busy and they had a very varied schedules, and they were having trouble figuring out when providers could come in and provide these transition services. And they said, the one silver lining in this is everybody's had to slow down a little bit and they're able to provide, they arrange these pre-ed services, and a broader number of students are getting access to these services. So,
and just to clarify, Maria, these pre-eds are services over the last few years. Mass Rehab, because of some changes in the law, is now providing what they're calling these pre-employment transition services to students with any type of disability.
any type of disability, and you do not, even though it's MRC that is arranging the providers, the student does not need to be eligible for MRC. This is any student.
And MRC is?
Mass Rehab Commission, excuse me. So they are the vocational rehab, and that is the primary agency that many young people would get referred to after they leave school. They are responsible. The law said that 15% of their budget needs to be directed towards transition age youth. And how they're doing that is providing these, what they consider pre-employment transition services. Many of these services that we're talking about, career awareness, independent living, orientation to college, better understanding of all of that. So they can kind of supplement what transition staff are doing. Or if you have a son or daughter that's primarily not getting these services, that's minimally the pre-employment would be maybe leading some of these activities, especially if they're younger, 14, 15 years old. So they are saying that they are having a little bit better luck arranging these classes for students now. And then the other thing that they are saying is that there really was a problem getting these referrals out to the adult agencies, those 688 referrals that are for those students that you know are going to need adult services, and you need to make the adult agencies aware that they are coming. So those 688 referrals are the referral forms that they use to say, I need you to pay attention, this person is coming. And they got kind of bottlenecked in the spring. And so some of them are saying, okay, we are working more closely with the DDS provider to say, let's figure this out, because we got to get rid of this bottleneck. This young person is coming. We need to get those services. So let's work more closely together to get these referrals into you. And what else do we need to do? Sometimes it's getting connections with the families. Sometimes it's setting up a meeting, and they're saying, we're going to pay more attention to helping you to make decisions about these people, to make sure that they are meeting the criteria for those adult services. So that's the other thing that they're doing. And if you're finding that people are not doing that, that's the kind of thing that there are a lot of webinars, a lot of places. I could send some links to that are trying to help people to say, yeah, got it, COVID, this is a problem, but you can move on with your work. It's not ideal, but you can move on and provide good, rich services for young people, because it's extremely important that they get these services. And I guess that's all I have to say about that. I'm happy to answer any questions now. I'm also happy to have anybody email me. I'm happy to talk with you. And some of the questions that you're asking are things I think, like, if I can't answer them, my colleagues can. And I completely appreciate how hard this is. I think everybody understands how hard this must be for families right now. And for me, my job is to make sure that transition staff understand you can still do your work.
Even during COVID.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Maria. This is so helpful and gives a lot of food for thought. I know there's a bunch more questions for those who need to leave. You know, it's 8:45. I know not everybody can stay longer. There is another question about, for the next chat in 2 weeks, whether people want to hear from another outside expert, or whether you would prefer to have me and some other lawyers from MAC talk about some of the legal issues and have some Q&As around, steps that families can take. So if you can answer that chat while we open it up for more questions, for those of you who want to stay longer, I know there's some good questions there.
Absolutely, thank you. Our first question is, which colleges in Massachusetts are giving students FAFSA if they do not receive a diploma? And which colleges are officially matriculating students in Massachusetts without a diploma? Sure. That info.
Well, okay, let me go back and just, let me go back to that map so I can just show you that map of okay, so right here, what you see is that's the Massachusetts Inclusive Concurrent Enrollment Initiative. And who's eligible for this, and Julia does a lot of work with this initiative. These are colleges who are partnering with school districts, and they all agree to provide college-based transition services to students who are eligible. And that means that they either, one way what makes them eligible is they're eligible for transition services, that they're not likely to meet the requirements of their district's diploma, and that they have, well, Julia, I don't know if it's severe disability or autism. I mean, I often say intellectual disability or developmental disability, but
yeah, significant disabilities. Yeah.
Yeah. And so those students, like, just to dip into this a little bit, they're not paying necessarily for college. This is part of their transition services, and all of them are getting funds from the Department of Higher Ed. Mary Price is the director of this initiative at the Department of Higher Ed. She used to be a college program coordinator herself, so she knows this work backwards and forwards, a leader in this work. And they are primarily trying to help students. Now, they are in the same boat. They are having to do things remotely, but now their work is teaching students how to continue taking classes online and how to engage in activities that the colleges are offering, the social activities that they're offering. Part of that question, I think, was about FAFSA. Now, there are a number of colleges that are what they call TIPSIDs. They have become certified transition programs. They have met the criteria to be what they call certified transition programs. And that means that those students would now be eligible to get financial aid for college. They are not, normally you're trying to help them find scholarships so that it's not prohibitively expensive. But in Massachusetts, we have so many of these initiatives. There is one TIPSID that I know of, Project Forward in the Cape is a certified transition program. But what's really nice about these initiatives, they're required to do it inclusively. That's the goal, that they are helping students to take typical classes and get involved in typical activities. So that's another presentation in and of itself, I think. But that's the short story on this initiative.
And then just one thing I'd like to add, if it's okay, Maria, is there is legislation pending in the State House right now that has passed the Senate unanimously, but it hasn't yet passed the House, that would have it so that all of our state colleges and universities would be including students with developmental disabilities, intellectual disabilities, and other disabilities. But we'll see. We'll keep you all posted about where that legislation goes.
Definitely sign up for our email list to get updates on that and to get advocacy alerts to contact your legislators. I'll put that link in the chat.
Yeah.
Our next question is about disclosing disability to an employer. If a parent has a high school student on an IEP with high functioning autism, do they need to disclose, and would you recommend them disclosing?
You know, it's such a personal decision about whether you want to disclose or not. I think when you're having this discussion and you can kind of weigh the pros and cons of disclosing disability, I think one of the things that we talk about is if you don't disclose, do you feel like you have access to the accommodations that typical accommodations that are going to help you to do your job? Or do you think it would help you to disclose your disability and pair it with Here's the kinds of accommodations that are going to help me to do my job well. Then it might make sense to practice disclosing your disability and pair it with, and these are the kind of accommodations that help me. That's how I would put it, because there's no reason to disclose for the sake of disclosing. It's really, do you want to disclose because maybe it's going to lead to adaptations or accommodations that you need.
Great.
Thank you. Another question. My daughter is 21. Can she go to these colleges past the age of 22?
If this legislation passes, yes. That's the other thing that the bill will do. Otherwise, it's more difficult in our state.
And I'll just say that the reason, I mean, we're so appreciative that Julia is working on this, because right now they have, normally these colleges are saying you have to have a high school diploma. And what happens is once they turn 22 and they're not eligible, a lot of them want to keep going to college, but right now they might need that diploma. And so this legislation would make it possible, right, Julia, for them to continue going even if they don't have a high school diploma.
Right. And to work with DDS or work with MRC for the support. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Good question. Again, you know, sign up for the emails, whoever asks that question, and we can keep you posted.
Yeah, I'll be posting that in the chat to sign up for our email list. Our next question is, do you or should you ask the special education team for a transitional team partner?
By partner, do you mean like a transition specialist or a provider?
I'm not sure what they mean. If this person's still on, if you could clarify in the Q&A.
Let me just say that everybody in the school needs to get the, you know, anybody who's there and is eligible for transition services should expect that there are people that then can provide transition services at your school. But if you might say, is there somebody on this team that takes the lead with transition services? Because that is true. Sometimes schools identify one person to answer all the questions, but they generally make sure that they're at those IEP meetings. But if you're unclear, then the first thing you could say is there somebody here who takes the lead with transition services?
Great, thank you. Let's see, our next question is, how old should a person be to start sending the referrals for 688?
Well, the law states that they need to be sending those referrals 2 years before they anticipate the individual transitioning. And that gives the state, there's a couple of reasons for that, and Julia, jump in anytime, but I know that the reason for that is, one, to give them a heads up, to let them know that this person is coming, and that they can then start maybe advising the team on preparation, what kind of services might they expect, you know, talking to the family about what they might expect. But also that helps with the budget, planning their budgets to make sure that they have the right funds to support X number of students that are going to be moving out of special education and into adult services. So 2 years ahead.
Great, thank you. Next question. When or in what grade should transition services be offered? Can students begin participating in work services while they're in high school, and in what grades?
Absolutely. I mean, in Massachusetts, we're lucky that the law says age 14 is when you start. By the time a student is turning into their 15th year, they should be at their meeting, invited. They don't have to come, but we really encourage them to come and just sit for a little bit and hear about how people are talking about transition services. There's research that is highly mentioned that students with disabilities who have at least 2 paid work experiences while they're in high school are much more likely to have paid work when they get out of high school. So absolutely, paid work is the goal, and career development education can be starting minimally by grades 7 and 8. And that is ideal. You know, we're working with middle school teachers where we're saying like 2 things. Can you help a student understand what their IEP is? And secondly, what can you be doing to help them to explore careers and jobs and the soft skills that they need to develop to do well in those jobs? So absolutely start young.
Thank you. And it looks like we have time for maybe one more question.
Sure.
What about those with significant intellectual or developmental disabilities who will be transitioning to group homes and day programs? Are they open for any kind of visiting or other ways to learn about the options?
Well, first of all, they are completely entitled to and should be participating in all of these activities, even if they are adapted in some way to make it meaningful for them. But there was something about that question that kind of perplexed me. They can certainly still participate in these. What was the first part of that question?
All right, one second. Those with significant intellectual or developmental disabilities who will be transitioning to group homes and day programs. Are they open for any kind of visiting or other ways to learn about their options?
The opening to visiting is the part I didn't quite understand. Although I'm going to be
To
very...
observe, I think they're asking you if you want to observe what the different options might be for your DDS services. Or
Oh, you know what? That is a really good question. And again, I think my colleagues wrote about this, but right, I'm sorry. That is a good question. I don't have the answer to that, and I apologize, but I will get that answer.
Thank you. So it looks like on the map, Mass Art is listed as a Macy partner. Someone's interested in that. Would they also have supports for a student with emotional disabilities?
I'm going to say yes. Mass College of Art is the newest partnership. This is actually their first year, but they have been so thoughtful about opening this program. They have been working for at least a year, talking to everybody, attending a lot of Think College webinars. They so thoughtfully planned for this. I know that who's eligible is the students with intellectual disabilities or developmental disabilities, those with significant disabilities, but I'm going to assume most of the colleges that we're working with also are using those supported education practices with students with more emotional disabilities. I mean, we borrowed our work from the very people that developed these supported education practices. So most of them, I think, are supporting them.
Thank you. Great questions. And Maria, just thank you so much. It's just a wealth of information and really helpful, I think, for everybody who participated. So we really appreciate your time, and for all of you who joined us tonight. Thank you. Lily, any other logistics before we sign off?
No, I'm going to put the helpline number in the chat one more time. If we weren't able to get to your question tonight, please contact our helpline.
Yes, so thank you all, and we'll let you know soon what our topic will be in 2 weeks. And again, thank you so much to Maria Paiewonsky.
Oh yeah, thank you, and thank you for letting me share some information today. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. Thank you. It was great seeing you.
You too. See ya. Bye.
Bye.